In this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, we speak with Juniper Networks on delivering NFV solutions to address different types of operational models. Well, thanks for joining us on this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief at RCR Wireless News. On this week's show, we have a featured interview with Juniper Networks to discuss delivering NFV solutions to address different types of operational models. But first, let's take a look at some of the top headlines from across the space from over the past week. Well, AT&T this week announced a partnership with VeloCloud to deliver SD-WAN services to enterprises looking to migrate networks from hardware to software. The deal calls for AT&T's SD-WAN portfolio to include a network-based solution combining hybrid networking with multiple network access options, allowing for optimized application performance based on customer-selected parameters. The customization option also includes network bandwidth management. The platform is set to be available next year. For companies looking to deploy SD-WAN across similar deployment models at various locations, AT&T said its premise-based over-the-top solution could be a better fit, with the benefit of the offer being available later this year. In terms of the overall software moves, AT&T said the hybrid SD-WAN platform is its third integrated option following its SDN and NFV launches. Further SD-WAN moves are said to include additional collaborations. Also this week, Etsy's open source Mano initiative continued to feed software into the management and orchestration community with the launch of its OSM Release 1 stack. Etsy said the release had been engineered, tested, and documented to allow for rapid installation in operator labs worldwide that seek to create a scalable and interoperable open source Mano environment. Release 1 moves on enhancing interoperability with the VNFs and SDN controllers and creates a plugin framework designed to ease platform maintenance and extensions. The release follows up on the launch of Release 0 in May, which integrated seed code supplied by Telefonica, Rift.io, Canonical, and other vendors. Etsy at that time predicted the Release 1 unveiling within 6 months. That's just a taste of all the NFV and SDN related news from the past week, so make sure to check out rcrwirelessnews.com for more. Well, for our featured interview this week, we spoke with Paul Upstinik, a VP of Service Provider Marketing at Juniper Networks, to get his view on the need to deliver NFV solutions designed to address different types of operational models. Let's take a look at the interview now. All right, well, thanks for joining us on this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. I'm your host here, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief at RCR Wireless News. And this week, we are joined by Paul Upstinik, who's the VP of Portfolio Marketing at Juniper, to talk a bit about the NFV space. So, hey, Paul, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
Welcome, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Very good. Let me just start off with, for those who don't know much about Juniper, maybe a little overview on the company and kind of how you guys participate in the telecom space.
Yeah, great. So Juniper, our roots actually were based on the premise of our founder, Pradeep, who really was looking at the internet back in the late 90s and saw the possibility, the potential to scale, but didn't see the capability of the routers that were around at that time to truly scale. And so that was the premise of the company and why it was founded. Took off very successful, and since then we've expanded to really drive innovation and networking around routing, switching, security product lines. And that's really where Juniper is focused, is really a pure play company focused on driving that innovation, because we think, and as we'll talk about today, we think there's a huge need in the networking space, both for service providers and for enterprise organizations, to really take advantage of some of the innovation that Juniper is delivering.
Very good. Well, yeah. Well, obviously, one of the topics we always focus on here is the virtualization space, and I think everyone's pretty well aware of those new acronyms of NFV and SDN and things like that have really kind of been a big driver in the space for the past couple of years. So I guess maybe from Juniper's point of view, what's I guess your general overall view of kind of this move towards virtualization? I guess the development and the deployment of kind of these NFV and SDN based platforms.
Yeah, so I think from Juniper's standpoint, we're really excited about this evolution. We see it as, in many ways, harkening back to our roots with our M40 router, the first router on the market to logically separate the control and the data plane. So if you think about SDN, that really was the basis of the roots of that, and it's grown and it's expanded with NFV and virtualization, a lot of the automation stuff that Juniper is contributing to as well. But we're excited about it because one, it kind of speaks to our roots, and there's a lot of innovating that we can do. But more importantly, we think it's a tremendous opportunity for our customers, a great way for them to not only look at how do I reduce the cost of my network from from a capital and an operational expense, but probably more critically and more importantly, how can I start to be more, create more services, create new revenue streams, deliver more value to my business units, and do it in a much faster way? We've seen a lot of innovation in the data center to where the agility, the speed at which things are happening is increased. And the network has not necessarily kept up to pace so far, but over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've definitely seen a lot of that. And so that's where we're very excited to take our innovation roots, but really help our customers drive business value from their end.
Obviously, and again, the agility part of this is always a big part. I know whenever I talk to a telecom operator, that's one of the things that they're really looking to do is drive that agility in the network. And I think you're right. They look at the data center market and they see what they're able to do over there and the web-based guys and see what they're able to do so quickly. Obviously, they want to do that, but unfortunately for a lot of telecom players, they've got a lot of legacy equipment, which has not been the most agile at times, but obviously that seems to be changing. But I guess for those operators, I mean, from your point of view, what do you see as being maybe some of the big advantages, obviously beyond the agility part of it, for them to kind of really take advantage of this virtualization movement? I mean, again, agility is a big part of it, but what else do you see as them, being able to, I guess, drive some different business cases there, or what do you see as being a big movement for those guys?
Yeah. So, I think in many ways, agility is critical. Yeah. And that, I think you have to look at both the cost and the revenue side. On the cost side, there's a lot of, today in many of the traditional service provider processes, it was very manual. It was very linear. Mm-hmm. I would do my part, and then I'd open up a trouble ticket or pass it off to you, and you would get into it a couple of days later. And it just took time. And when you have anything that's manual, we're human beings, and there's always the possibility of an error. So from an operational standpoint, really driving greater automation not only reduces some of the human error standpoint, it reduces your operational expense. It allows you to increase the utilization of our network. For example, many core networks and service providers are running at 40% utilization because they don't know where there's going to be a failure. They need to be able to accommodate it. And so they keep the utilization rate low. But with products like our North Star controller, mm-hmm. where you can start to dynamically adjust on the fly to any cuts or changes, you start looking at the ability for the network to react in a real-time basis to where maybe you go to 50, 60, 70% utilization and then getting more for every CapEx dollar that you're spending. So on that cost element, it's a critical element. And I think it's something that all service providers are looking at. But I think ultimately where they really get excited is on that revenue side, because cost is important. We all know, every company out there knows they need to manage costs, Juniper included. And that's a critical element to having a continuing viable business. But what really drives a lot of your success metrics, and in no small part, interest or validation with your customer base, is driving new revenue, new services. And I think that's really where the agility comes into play. And it gives service providers, I think, the ability to, whereas before it was a very expensive process to create a new service, mm-hmm. It took a long time, it was a big investment. So if it's going to take you 18 months to create a service and $2 million, everybody's going to get in on reviewing that service. You've got to go all the way up to your VP, SVP, and it just takes time. And you could probably afford to do 2 or 3 a year. Whereas if we can cut that back and say, what about 3 months or 2 months time to generate a new service? What about $200,000? Then you can start to sprinkle more services out there. Maybe it doesn't have to go to the VP level. Maybe a director level can improve. Easier to do trials in different markets. So you start to see an environment where you can start to experiment and deploy. And I think it speaks to more of the real-time environment today, because I was in our executive briefing center with a large service provider, and we were talking about this. And one data point that he threw out was that on the App Store, on Apple's App Store, only 20% of those applications are truly profitable. And, seems logical to me. I take it at face value. But the problem is you don't know which 20%. So you got to put the 100% up before you know what that 20% is. And I think in many ways, none of us can predict the future. So if you give them the agility to try new services, then they can see which ones fail, which ones succeed, and really invest in those ones that succeed. And just as importantly, it allows them to align that expense with the expected revenue, so the operational risk goes down. So I think on that revenue side, that agility element is critical, but it goes hand in hand with the cost element, because any business person is going to look at that and want to be benefiting from both sides.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess looking at that cost aspect of it, I mean, is there a certain sort of like timeline or time frame operators should be looking at? Because it does seem like there is that, obviously initial costs involved with deploying these platforms. That's just part of the business. But if you can kind of show to a CFO or somebody who's going to sign off on the check there that, hey, there's some investment right now, but we can turn it around by rolling out new services, right. 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road. I guess, are those realistic kind of time frames to be able to do these things, or should operators, I guess, does it depend on where they are in terms of their own deployment models, I guess?
Well, it will vary operator. Okay. And, you will see some operators that have a fundamental belief and will drive a wholesale change. Yeah. Because that's a big dynamic that they want to change, but that can be challenging for many service providers. Yeah. Because it could be a big investment. And so with many of the service providers we work with, a large part of it is really thinking about specific use cases. Mm-hmm. Where can you drive business value? The ultimate benefit is a platform play from our perspective. Mm-hmm. And we think once the platform's in a service provider network, they can leverage it in many ways. But to validate that investment, to get the CFO to approve that investment, in many ways, it is really a specific use case that will drive it. And so, Juniper, we've focused on a couple of key use cases. One of them is virtual CPE. Mm-hmm. That we've leveraged, where we've launched our cloud CPE platform that allows you to do both a truly centralized virtual CPE where all applications are delivered from the cloud. But then we also found that there were some customers that actually wanted some applications resident at the site. So we were able to develop a platform that allowed you to do both a centralized that is distributed, and then just most recently we added SD-WAN capability. Mm-hmm. So that complete platform to address multiple solutions we think is critical, and we have conversations with our service provider customers around that. But with most customers, if you cannot have one or two specific use cases where they're going to be able to drive business value within that 6 month, 9 month time frame, it gets to be very difficult. And so that's where we've focused, is to try and look at what are those areas. Virtual CPE, as I mentioned, is a key one, SD-WAN, and really invest a significant amount of time with our customers in promoting and driving that value there. Still thinking about the longer term platform play. And from our perspective, that's a critical element to go. And we spend a lot of time with them looking at the business case, putting together the validation of what is the upfront investment, when is that long-term payoff, and that's critical. And so we've had a fair amount of success with companies like Orange, like AT&T, Verizon, where we've gotten some very nice adoption and wins of key elements of our product line. So that's exciting. But we think there's a number of other customers we're working with, and we're starting to really, for the last, I'd say 12 months, 18 months, a lot of it was discussion, kicking the tires, but mm-hmm. We're starting to see the benefit of a lot of that activity, where we're starting to look at actual commercial deployments, which is exciting. Still have a long ways to go. There's still, a huge amount of virgin territory, but we think we're moving in the right direction.
Interesting. So obviously, it sounds like not just agility in terms of what carriers can do, but obviously it seems like your vendor community has to be pretty agile as well when it comes to what deployment models you're going to go with. Because again, operators might want to do little small bits here and there. They might want to, as you said, have some stuff on-prem and not on-prem. It seems like you guys have to be pretty open to kind of whatever a customer really wants to do.
Right. Yeah, I think, at Juniper, I think any vendor, and I can only speak for Juniper, but my opinion is any vendor that is truly embracing this virtualized environment needs to, one, think about a complete solution, because that's what customers need. And I believe that our cloud CPE solution is the best on the market today, but it's made up of a couple of elements. And Juniper, we've got to be comfortable with customers saying, you know what, Paul, I like 1, I like 4, I don't like 2 and 3. I want to bring in a different solution. And we've got to build our framework with very well-defined open parameters, open API, open protocols, even open source software. We've taken our Contrail networking and open sourced it. We built our cloud platform around OpenStack. So really looking at very much a modular perspective, so customers can come in and mix and match and choose what they think is the best solution for their needs. And so to do that, it's incumbent upon the industry and us as vendors to really think about what are those open APIs and open protocols, not doing proprietary protocols like some in the past have tried to do. looking at open organizations like NFV, like OCP, and really working in that environment so that we can give our customers choice and solutions to where they can pull that together. There still needs to be an element of integration, and that's where, from a Juniper perspective, we're looking at a lot of our service offerings, and we're seeing an increase in demand for professional services, educational services with our customers to be able to create those complete solutions. But we think a combination of choice as well as a nice service environment gives the customer a complete solution, but doesn't lock them into any specific type of implementation. We think that's where they want to go, and that's what we're trying to facilitate and help move in that direction.
Makes sense. Well, not to go too far down the open source rabbit hole, but I guess maybe on that topic, I guess how, from Juniper's point of view, I mean, how well is the vendor community working together to make sure that these things can be kind of plug and play type of compatibility? Because I know, I mean, again, operators are always looking to kind of break out of that vendor lock model that they've had in the past, and they want to make sure that they can, like you said, select who they want. Right. Again, the open source communities have helped there as well. But I guess from your point of view, how well is that work going on behind the scenes?
Well, I think, there's a lot of activity going on. I think there's a lot of open organizations. Yeah. It could be a challenge though, because we've seen in the press, in the media, that there are even some service providers that have said there are too many open organizations.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
And that is, it is a challenge. As a vendor, we want to support them all, but we have limited resources, both from a marketing budget standpoint, but also from an engineer standpoint, and being able to contribute resources. So on a regular basis, we're having to make decisions about where can we best support our customers by participating in interoperability tests and trials, by participating in open organizations, and so that's a continuous. And I'm sure it's the same for any of the other vendors out there. It's a continuous evolution. And my take is we're probably going to see the number of organizations expand and then come back a little bit and expand, and that's probably reality. I think if we try and put if we proliferate it out to 100 open organizations, we're all going to struggle, and we risk, I don't want to say failure, but we risk slowing down progress significantly. If we say there's only 2 organizations, then I think we risk innovation, holding back innovation. And so it is a bit of a balance. I can't say we've cracked the code and we have a secret sauce. I do know we're investing a significant time with many of the key organizations, like NFV. We just joined the Telecom Infra Project, Open Compute, just a few, name a few. We're involved in a number of different interoperability tests. We did one with Intel. We did one with the NIA, the new IP agency. So really look at what can we do to get together with other vendors, look at interoperability, because I've been in the networking space for a while. I started out way back when in the mid 90s with 3Com, and even back then, I don't want to say joke, but the what would put a smile on your face is we'd say standards are great, but they're subject to interpretation. And that's the reality is, if we have an open standard, but you develop against something and I develop against it, not guaranteed that we're going to be able to communicate. And so I think the open organizations are critical, but also looking at some interoperability environments and looking at how do we test that out. And there's some of those projects that we're doing that Juniper's doing internally. We have our proof of concept lab. We have our open lab infrastructure to allow our customers to come in with other third parties to try some of this out, but also working with industry interoperability forums to validate that, I think, is important. And so you've seen a bunch of investment, or if you go look, you will see that Juniper's made a lot of investment. We're going to continue to do that going forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, obviously, I think this is probably a topic we could spend another 2 hours talking about just that alone. But I remember when I first started covering this market, it did seem like every week there was a new open organization coming out, or maybe even vendor-specific organization that came out. And it did seem like there for a while that, maybe this is too many, and, are we slicing the pie up a little too thin? Right. At the end of the day, is it going to still look like a pie? I mean, it's like, how are we doing this? And it did seem a little crazy. It does seem like maybe it's slowed a little bit. There's not as many coming out, but it seems like it's still a bit of a challenge out there, making sure that we're all, at the end of the day, going towards the same goal, I guess.
Right. Agreed. And, to rationalize it for Juniper and to keep our sanity, we will try and stay very closely aligned with our customers. And if our customers are saying this is critical, we need you to be involved, we're going to be involved there.
Yeah. I guess maybe on that topic, I mean, how different or how important is it to have, at least from the telecom space, to have actually the carriers driving a lot of this? Because it seemed like, legacy models when it came to vendor-carrier relationship was always the vendor trying to drive a new technology to the carrier and trying to convince them, hey, look at this cool new thing I've got. where it seems like in this move towards virtualization, it is a lot of the operators really taking a leading position in this. And I think we've seen a lot of the big guys domestically, AT&T, Verizon, DT overseas, SK, really driving kind of what they want to have happen in this. I guess from a vendor's perspective, is that good? Is that kind of making you guys catch up a little bit? I guess what's the view from you guys and having those guys out there kind of leading the pace?
Well, I think it's a good thing. I think we can't solely rely on the service providers because I think they're relying on the broader vendor community to drive innovation. Because I think rightly so, they're not saying they have a lock on where everything needs to go. Mm-hmm. But I think where they're doing a great job is getting in there and really talking about directionally. We want to go north, or we want to go west or south or east, and saying this is where we as an industry need to go. Now, they're not saying we need to go 5 degrees to the right of north or left, but they're saying this is where we need to go. And it's great because, at the end of the day, vendors like Juniper, we survive by having strong partnerships and strong relationships with our customers and delivering business value for them. And we can't lose sight of that. And we don't lose sight of that, I don't think. But understanding what that business, it's easy to say, but hard to do, because how do you translate that generic business value phrase into actionable activities that are going to drive that value? And so having the service providers out there talking about where they want to go, where they need to go, is important and gives us a great directional indication. I still think there is room for us to drive a fair amount of innovation and the vendor community drive a fair amount of innovation in terms of looking at different ways to how to get there, or is it, like I said, is it a few degrees off north, east or west? Being able to adjust is critical. So I think it's important there, but it is a little bit of a combination of both. And we have regular discussions with our customers, and we're seeking to understand where they're going, where they want to go. We're also proposing, hey, here's what we're thinking. Here's how we think we might be able to help you. This might be a better way for you to, get greater agility, reduce your costs. And so it will continue to be that iterative nature. But I think it's been a general positive for the service providers taking that more leading role.
Interesting. And obviously, too, it does seem like that there is a lot of work being done in terms of the enterprise space as well. I know enterprises, either working through a carrier as well or directly through vendors, are really, it seems like they're kind of the leading edge of driving a lot of this virtualization initial development and deployment, because it seems like, they're able to operate in maybe a more siloed environment as opposed to a telecom operator. So they don't have to worry about so much about, service level agreements and things like that to an extent. I mean, obviously, they need to worry about it. Not like an operator needs to. I guess how important, and what do you see in terms of the enterprise kind of driving maybe also some of this development work in terms of the virtualization space?
Yeah, well, I think ultimately, what drives Juniper's needs is our customers' needs on the service provider side. Sure. But what drives their needs is what the enterprise is looking for. Yeah. And I think, it is an interesting environment. And I would even go a little further. The enterprise is being driven by the consumer's needs. And so I think it's kind of an interesting evolution where all of us are getting retrained. Now we're looking at consuming more and more content via video. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing more people prefer to leverage video to really drive a lot of that content or leverage it. You're seeing user interfaces being driven by companies like Apple or Google that are more intuitive, and consumers are adjusting to that. And then as I get used to my iPhone or get used to a different interface, then I'm coming back and when I'm at work, I'm going to my IT department. How come you guys can't do it? And so I think we're
they love to hear that. I'm sure they love that.
I'm sure they do. No, trust me. It's like, well, I got a lot of other problems to deal with. Not another one I need. But it is a reality. At the end of the day, those IT departments, whether you call it SLAs or whether you call it demand requirements, they have business unit customers that are trying to add value to their customers and putting demands on the IT organization. And for CIOs, it's difficult. They've got to adapt to some of these new interfaces, new capabilities, new technologies like the cloud, and drive that capabilities while doing it in an environment with probably flat budgets if they're lucky, maybe declining, and with all the security pressures as well. So I think you're kind of seeing that cascading environment that's being driven by a lot of what's happening in the cloud. And we talk a lot about many of the trends like cloud, mobility, big data, video, et cetera. We could name a bunch. But the truly transformative one that I think is the cloud. Because you think about video without the cloud, we don't have YouTube. It's me back in the 3Com days in the early 90s watching corporate training videos on my desktop. You think about phones, you're in mobility, It's calls and text messages. We don't have the app store. We don't have all that stuff. So that cloud is truly that transformative element that more and more companies are looking at. How can I take advantage of it? How can I change my business model? And so, as we work with customers, both from an enterprise and a service provider standpoint, we try and talk about transformation at 3 levels: business transformation, technology transformation, and organizational transformation. Because to truly reap all the benefits, you've got to really get the trifecta of all 3 right to make it happen.
Very interesting. Well, I guess from a service provider's point of view, I mean, how comfortable can they be in the cloud environment, being able to support what they're trying to do? Because it does still seem like, there's maybe some concern about scalability, and obviously operators have like we talked about earlier, kind of certain service level agreement type of things, or carrier grade requirements that, obviously the legacy equipment they've been able to kind of make work in those environments. As they move towards this virtualized world, while it seems like it should be able to meet those requirements, I think there's still some, maybe a little bit of hesitation for some operators because they're not quite sure what happens, on a Friday night when something goes wrong somewhere, who's the whole throat to choke kind of thing that goes on. I guess, how comfortable should they be with what's out there today, and I guess what's coming in the next couple of months?
Well, I think it's a great point. And I think that's oftentimes a conundrum for many of the service providers, because they need, their customers are still going to expect that SLA.
Yeah.
But I think more, I was talking to an individual at Facebook, and they were talking about, hey, we do care about 5 nines. We care about 5 nines for the application, not necessarily for the individual piece of equipment. And I think that type of a mentality is an important mentality to have, and you need to think about it. It doesn't mean that 5 nines for certain pieces of equipment aren't important. Mm-hmm. For example, if you have end connectivity and something fails in that last mile, that could be a single point of failure. And then you need 5 nines for that piece of equipment, but also, being intelligent about making those decisions and where you have that 5 nines and where you don't, I think is important. And I think service providers are getting comfortable with that. That's why we've had SDN and NFV around for a while, and we're really only starting to see the commercial deployments. And I think it's because of that, they need to think about, what is this, to my earlier point, what does this mean for my business model? Yeah. When do I need 5 nines? Maybe there are some services I don't need to offer 5 nines on. And I think they are starting to think about that. But you need to have those conscious business decisions and understand where it's okay, communicate that to your customers and set their expectations. And then that flows back to making sure your network can meet whatever those requirements are. But then just as importantly, organizationally, thinking about how, to truly embrace the cloud, it isn't just putting in a virtualized router. You've got to think about how your operational team works with your technology infrastructure team, works with your development team. And, how do those organizations start to work together in a more seamless fashion, not in a siloed fashion? How do they, I've been in networking for a while. I know SNMP, CLI. I didn't know Chef, Puppet, Python. So, I had a year or two ago, I had to get up to speed on those. And so it is kind of merging and marrying those two. And a large part of it is, supplementing your resources if you don't have folks who understand those technologies, retraining and bringing those other employees up to speed so that they can talk seamlessly, and then ensuring that, your equipment, your switches can interface to a Chef or a Puppet system, so that the information flows very quickly together, and we can start translating between some of those languages, if you will. So I do think it is a change for them. I think they are adapting and adjusting, but that's why I think it's taken a little bit of time. But I think we're going to start to see some of that acceleration as we go forward, because they are starting to come to grips with a lot of these decisions. Yeah,
well, again, I think the organizational, cultural changes that operators need to embrace as part of this. That's another 2-hour conversation right there. Obviously, you touch on a lot of the points there, but you're right, that's a whole, I think you're right, operators are very concerned about that, and that's what they're working through. That's a big part of what they're trying to do. So, that's a whole different conversation there. But, well, I guess maybe as a wrap-up question here, I guess, and you've already touched on quite a few already, but I guess looking forward to the next 6 to 12 months or so, what do you see as maybe some of the big challenges going forward in terms of, I guess, this continuation of the development and the deployment of SDN and NFV by operators? And again, like I said, I know you touched on some already, but maybe what are some other ones that maybe you see as some hurdles you guys might need to kind of tackle here soon that kind of will require quite a bit of maybe some long work weeks, I guess.
Yeah, I think very, very good question. I think a fair amount as we go forward. What I believe we're going to start seeing is more and more commercial deployments. Okay. what ends up happening is as you start driving more commercial deployments, you start realizing that there were things you weren't thinking of beforehand. So it is a bit of this iterative approach. I think as we start getting more and more experience with commercial deployments, we're starting to see opportunities or areas of improvement that Juniper as a company is going to drive. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of that as we move forward. I think more and more thinking about complete solutions. As I've talked about before, our customers are looking for these complete solutions, but I don't want to say it's counterintuitive, but as we move to a more modular dynamic, that starts to pull us away from complete solutions because we need more companies getting involved. And so I think making sure that we have coordination points so that we don't lose sight of that, and the modularization doesn't create a difficult challenge to create these complete solutions. And I think this is where continuing the evolution of many of the open organizations is critical, making sure that we don't get too much proliferation to our earlier point, but ensuring that we understand what those complete solutions are. But then I think from a Juniper standpoint as well, making sure that we're working with many of our third-party customers, some of our OSS, BSS partners that we work with to get that integration, third-party VNF vendors so that customers have a good choice, and we can bring them into an open lab environment with our customer and Juniper equipment and test it out and prove it out and make sure that there are no issues there. So I think that's probably, we're going to learn a lot as we start to commercialize more of this, and I think it's going to be kind of that evolutionary loop that we're going to drive, but we're going to have to keep it tight because customers don't want to wait. But I think, again, back to the whole cloud, that's the beauty of it. We can evolve and we can go through some of these rapid turns, make changes fast, and not have it be a 9-month wait to fix things, but rather have it be a very rapid evolution.
Yeah, that's good. Well, again, Paul, great insight there on the topic. I know, again, there's a lot of these little things that we talked about that could have been another 2 or 3 hour conversations there, but definitely great insight there on kind of what's happening in the market. We definitely appreciate the time on that. It's always good to catch up with Juniper and what's going on out there. But again, thanks so much for the time and insight today. We definitely appreciate it. Well, thanks for joining us on this week's show, and make sure to check out our next show when we speak with VeloCloud on NFV trends and its work with Open Daylight on SDN. Thanks for watching.
NFV SDN Reality Check with Dan Meyer is a production of RCR TV. To suggest show topics or to reach Dan, you can find him on email, dmeyer@rcrwireless.com, and on Twitter @Meyer_Dan. For more Dan, news on NFV SDN and everything wireless, find your way over to rcrwireless.com.